Hi, welcome to our conversation on selling with empathy. My name is Keith Miccio. I work with sales enablement. I have with me Jason Bagshaw. He is an enterprise sales rep in the Government IQ division. He has a very good track record over there. 10 President's Clubs, working on his 11th. According to him, he's going for that this week. Already had 100% of his number here halfway through June. So thank you for just taking a few minutes with me, Jason, to talk a little bit about a very important topic and what's going on right now.
I appreciate it. I'm honored to sort of share my thoughts. It's really been interesting. It's this year with the pandemic, obviously, is just put everything upside down, and it really made me stop, Keith, and kind of rethink what I was doing. And I think it was right when all the work from home orders started hitting everyone in corporate America. With at least with enterprise companies, most companies that are 200 million or higher in total revenue, they have, a lot of procedures in place and contingency plans and so forth. But the interesting thing is, no matter what, there were so many people that were just caught off guard, and they were scrambling. And it was really interesting to me to hear what people were going through. I felt very blessed that I was already working remote, but I think for all the people that were going remote, trying to have, an informed discussion with somebody who has never worked remote ever in their entire life, to go remote, and for them to try and manage all of their kids with, daycare and with school being out, it just like shook the junk drawer, dumped it upside down and said, hey, America, make sense of this, right? So I really tried to stop what I was doing and really sort of think through how I was going to approach that. So I'm happy to, share some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. And one of the things that, I thought was important, especially, when we were as a team tasked with having conversations about how do we do our jobs better in the environment that we now see ourselves in. And for me, the biggest thing is, you can Google tips and tricks and all this stuff and how to work better from home and all that. But, I'm really interested in the communities of practice. How are we doing things right now? How have people been doing them? And people that we know and people that we know are working with this within the same organization and dealing with the same issues that we are. So my first thought when I was tasked with this stuff was talking to people that I know that have had success doing this. And obviously, you working remote, have a really good understanding of that. But then the conversations I've had with you, even when I first brought this topic up with you, was just the importance of what exactly we're going to talk about. And that is empathy. And that is making, looking at it, not just about what your goals are. Obviously, those are important. As salespeople, we have goals, but also, caring about other people and caring about the people that you're talking to, and whether it's your first call with them, where you've been working on a deal with them for a month, getting to know them. And so I wanted to pick your brain on, when you think about that, what advice do you have for people, sales reps in particular, when it comes to slowing down, I guess, and taking the focus off of yourself and potentially putting it somewhere else?
So prior to the pandemic, at least for many of my enterprise folks I would call on, Keith, they were literally every single day jumping on a plane. They were on the plane, and I heard the pilot or the whomever just saying, hey, turn off your phones. And I always expected that. So whenever I got somebody on the phone, I had to be quick. I had to get to the brass tacks quick. I couldn't talk about niceties or how's this or weather or what have you. You had to get in right to the value pitch, and just say, hey, what I would normally say is, hey, I'm sure I caught you at a tough time, Keith. I'd love to set up a time maybe later this week or next week to talk about how we can grow your government practice. I'd like to learn more about your government practice and see if we can fill in some gaps for you. We can provide early visibility to opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And you had to be very, very quick. It's interesting, when about 2 weeks into the pandemic, I got this call from somebody that was pitching me, thinking I had any buying authority. which I obviously don't, but they came in hard and heavy. And it sounded so off color. It sounded so inappropriate, but it was the same pitch that you and I have heard for years, where you got to come in quick, you got to come in hard, and there's no niceties, and it's in and out, like a strategic execution of a military mission. And that was the business, that was the world that we lived in before. All of that has obviously changed. And so it's so funny, when I got off that call, I was like, okay, so my gut was starting to tell me that people are so scrambled in terms of their lives now that I have to come up with some fundamental changes. And to me, I had to start slowing down my speech.
Yeah.
I had to have more thoughtful pauses. And these are pauses like I'm having right now, is letting my audience, whoever I'm calling, let them just think for a sec. Their kids are probably scrambling on them, dogs barking. You know, I had this one lady just said, I hope you don't mind, but I'm sure you just heard the chicken roost in the background. We actually just got chickens, because who knows if I'm going to get eggs. And we had a moment where we just started laughing. But it was funny because those little moments like that made me realize that I was onto something of what my initial instinct was, is you just have to connect at a human to human level. We're all Americans going through this. As a civilization, we're going through this together. There's no one that's exempt from this. And with that said, I just said, you know what? The hell with the pitch. Don't pitch, right? That doesn't sound appropriate for these new times. You know, figure out what makes sense. And it's like, Keith, you and I have known each other for years now, and I know I can go have a beer with you anytime, and we could maybe sit up near a fireplace and just sit back and we could talk for hours. That is what I needed to incorporate in all of my calls, and that's what I started to do. And I've literally had the best phone calls, sales calls, you can call them sales calls, but I've actually had the best conversations of my entire career during this pandemic, which is just, to me, again, it's just crazy. But I would catch people that were, hey, Jason, I know we've been playing phone tag. Yeah, GovWin. I'm actually at the supermarket right now. I'm getting, bread and turkey because we're going to shutdown. It was this, February, March, or what have you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me let you go. You have more important things. You're running home. And he said, no. And I literally hear the cash register. They're scanning the meat and whatever. And I almost begged him. I said, let me catch up with you later. Like, don't sweat. We'll catch up later. And he said, no. He said, what you're providing is really valuable to me, and I want to learn more. And that literally, that one phone call, honestly, knocked my socks off, because I could not believe it, because every other circumstance, I went back in my head, I get hung up on every day. I get go fly a kite. I'm not interested. I don't need you. The usual. That's our life as an SDR, as a sales rep. So for me to actually have someone say, no, I want to talk to you. You don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you, made me realize that at the beginning of that call, the one thing I did, Keith, was I said, John, how are you doing? And he said, I am, I'm nervous. I don't know what this all means. I have to come up with a contingency plan for my office. I have to dust it off. I have to make sure that I have my employees. He's a general manager of the company. And he goes, I need to make sure that my ducks are in a row. I have everything in place. And I'm concerned, maybe I missed something. And we just talked about that for a sec. And I just took a pause. I just said, how's the family? How's everyone at home? I hope you don't mind me asking, but how's everyone at home? And it just kind of naturally came out of me. He said, no, we're good. We're, everyone's safe. Everyone's good. And after that, it set me up for success for the rest of that interaction and for all future interactions. He just called me just yesterday, and said, I just want to give you a heads up. I've been pushing for you for months now since we last spoke, and we decided we are going to go forward with GovWin. And I just want to let you know. And the procurement people are going to call you. Act surprised, but I'm giving you the heads up that I really appreciate your patience. I really appreciate everything that you've shared with me. I appreciate the pricing, everything. We're moving forward with you guys. I'm so excited for a long-term relationship. And it was really interesting, because all the other phone calls I had like that with others, taking time at the beginning just to acknowledge them as human beings, acknowledge them as fellow Americans that are scrambling. I was one person, she's like, I got boxes in the back of my car right now. I'm running home. I was like, oh my gosh, let me let you go. No, I want to talk to you. Let's talk about GovWin some more? And I'm just like, what twilight zone am I in? And so after those 2 phone calls, Keith, that changed everything. I literally took everything I'd done before and I just threw it out the window. And I said, lead with empathy, lead with compassion. You can never go wrong if you lead with empathy. Mm-hmm. If I ask you, Keith, how maybe your grandparents are doing, or someone that's near and dear to you, I know that your friend Mark or Bob wasn't feeling well or what have you, how are they doing? No one's going to go, why are you taking the time to ask me about my loved ones? That's insensitive. You're never going to hear that. The other thing that's a really interesting dynamic is no one's ever going to hang up on you. In sales, we get hung up all the time. That's why we signed up for it, because we have thick skin. Not one person has curtailed a conversation or said, you know what, I'm too busy, or everyone I've called has been busy, but they've taken the time to hear me out. And I think it all started with making that investment and just saying, how are you doing? There's a difference in empathy. There's 2 things about it. There's one is that it's not just about what you say. It's not just about the words that you say. You have to actually believe it. Mm-hmm. If I ask you, Keith, hey Keith, how are you doing today? That sounds a little quick to me. So if I go, Keith, Jason Bagshaw from Deltag, how are you doing today? And you just pause and how are you? That true, I actually care about you tone of voice. You have to believe it. If you don't believe it, it's not genuine. And as you know in life, it's like, when you smile and you talk, you can hear that on the other phone. I'm not seeing that person, but I hear that they're smiling. It brings down my guard. It makes me more calm. Same thing holds true is that with the tone of voice, it's absolutely critical. With the pauses, it's absolutely critical in incorporating those pauses. The other thing is listening. We've talked about in how many discussions we've had together with a lot of the new hire sessions is just doing active listening. Active listening means literally everything around you. I've listened to a bunch of TED Talks about active listening. I know you have too. Is you literally shut down your entire world around you, and all you do is you listen to that person. You just shut up and listen. So empathy, in my perspective, is not just what you're saying. It's not just the thoughtful pauses. It's also just empathetic listening and truly hearing them out, and then saying, wow, so whatever they've said, talk about that specific thing. Don't talk about GovWin or CostPoint or whatever it is. Talk about their needs, talk about their issues, focus on that. And when the time is right, you can fold back in your value out of whatever you're talking about. So those are just some of the, some of the things that I've kind of, honestly, it's been a trial and error. It's not something I was like, oh yeah, I have to do X or Y. And that's what's worked really well for me. And I kind of wanted to pause there because I think there's another part of it that is about gratitude. And I kind of just wanted to see if you had any thoughts or comments or questions about just kind of what I was just talking about before we get on to gratitude.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up gratitude, being grateful, because, this whole conversation is really focused on a mindset and how are you viewing the situation. And I think, everybody knows all the studies that the more grateful you are, the less stressed out you are. And so it's actually, for me, that whole grateful part of it has been difficult through all this, because like, how do you think about what other people are going through, some things that are not great right now, and then you add on top of the pandemic, everything else that's going on in our country right now. Like, I was reading an article yesterday on ESPN, and it was about the PGA Tour, and they were talking about potentially allowing the golfers to wear shorts instead of pants, and how it's like a whole conversation. And I was reading it, and I was like thinking about everything that's going on right now, and like people are talking about whether or not like the PGA Tour should allow like that. It blows my mind. And that used to be something that I would look at and be like, yeah, that's an interesting conversation. It's not as professional, but then it's like 150 degrees. And should they be allowed to? And now it's like, I shut that off. And I was like, this is crazy that this is what I'm reading right now. And just like so many different things that just doesn't seem as important as it used to.
Yeah, there's context, and then there's context, right? So to say, for me, my wife and I have been very involved with our church and our kids' school, and working with the homeless and the Capital Food Banks here in Austin. And I've been blessed to be a part of those charitable organizations, because it gives us, in a normal economy, it gives us a great sense of gratitude in a normal framework, in normal context. Fast forward to the coronavirus pandemic, to see in San Antonio on TV, I'm walking by the TV, and my wife was looking at the TV, and there was a line of 10,000 people in their cars lined up for miles for the San Antonio Food Bank. And I'm thinking, okay, these people are in their cars all day to get to the end of the line, not to get like 5 hams for a week or a month of food, to get like a day or two worth of food. And I will tell you, Keith, that stopped me in my tracks like I can't even tell you. I literally was walking by and I was so taken. I was looking up at the TV and I was absolutely floored by that. To think that I have food on the table, I have a job I can go to and apply myself. I'm a workaholic. I love to work. Imagine how many of the people that love to work out there that got laid off. They can't work. They can't support their family. So they have the lack of ability to feel that pride of taking care of your family and feeding your family, putting food on the table. And that really changed the dynamic for me. That one scene, and then you're hearing people passing away and getting really, really sick, and some folks that I don't know personally, but folks at our church that have since passed from COVID. And it's like, wow, it's amazing what we're going through. And then I started to really think there's a difference in being grateful, and then there's a difference that what I heard. I love to listen to The Rock for motivational videos. So when I'm working late at night and I'm getting work done, I love to just play on YouTube in the background any motivational video. I don't care what it is. If it's a good motivational video, I'm going to listen to it. Who am I to judge who is a good inspirational speaker? I love to listen to The Rock. He fires me up. And so he talked about, I'm pretty sure it was one of the videos with The Rock, but he talked about having an immense sense of gratitude. And I was like, an immense sense of gratitude? What? That stopped me in my tracks. And so he said, there's a difference in being grateful, and there's a difference between having an immense sense of gratitude. There's a difference. To me, I will equate it to saying you could be the best sales rep out there or be the most knowledgeable about your product. There's a difference in taking pride. You and I have talked about that many times. Taking pride in something is totally different than saying, I want to be the best at something. No. If you take pride in that, that's a game-changing difference, right? Because you own that in here, right? One life to live. I'm going to do this better than anyone else, and I'm going to own that pride. Immense sense of gratitude to me means that you completely brush aside whatever you originally thought was a sense of gratitude, and it's at the next level. And I truly think that part of my success this year specifically, because I've tried to be a very nice person my whole life, and be a good sales rep and be very knowledgeable about my product. But something is different this year. Something is different during this pandemic. And I really have been scratching my head because I've never seen anything like this. And I really think that when I start my day, and I've been sharing this with folks, like my SDR partners, and talking about when you get up in the morning, just taking in a breath of air and saying, I don't think I have COVID. I feel pretty good. That was a pretty good, breath. Just starting there at the lowest empirical level, lowest common denominator. I have air in my lungs. If you have family around you, whether it's, a spouse or your kids, or I know a lot of folks that are, sharing their places with their brothers and sisters during this time and so forth, whoever it is, even if it's just your roommate, hey, John's good, Mary's good, my wife's good, my husband's good, or my kids are doing well. I have a roof over my head. I have electricity on. I have AC or heat, whatever it is. I have breakfast. Those things we blow past and we're like, whatever. And then you go, no, you look at folks that are in a line 10,000 people long to get food for about 24, 48 hours. You go, no. For me, just having a meal, 3 cooked meals in a day that I don't have to go stand in a line for all day, then you realize, wow, we're really blessed. And I am selling the best solution in the world, Gov1IQ. I have amazing people that support me, and I'm honored to be able to support those folks in achieving our collective results. And you realize how immensely grateful you are. And I think it's so important. We do ourselves a disservice if we don't personally take the time to tap into that immense sense of gratitude each day, because there's a Grand Canyon of difference. So those themes, if you may, are kind of what I'm focusing on right now. But we learn to the day we die, and I'm going to continue to learn and adapt and try and innovate and evolve during this time. But those are just some of the things that I think is really connected with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty heavy conversation, but don't want to take too much time. So
yeah, no, appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Any closing thoughts? Any last bits of advice? Kind of altering our mindsets here a little bit to think outside the box and think of other people before ourselves.
So one thing I've shared with a lot of the newer folks that have joined us recently is just talking about how we don't think about it much, but our subconscious mind is going a million miles an hour. And we need to really, in order to kind of go through a normal day-to-day cadence and be effective, you have to do whatever you can to control the variables. We've talked about this over the years, there's so much that you don't control, but you do control your sense of empathy, your sense of immense gratitude, your day-to-day, what that looks like in terms of, I always say, listen, if you're a coffee person and you're a 2 cup of coffee person, have 2 cups of coffee every single day at the same time, wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, whatever you like, whatever your body likes, whatever you do, whatever habits you have, stick to those habits, do not change. Take the same path from your bed to where you're officing for the day within your house. Take the same way around the couch or whatever, because that's typically my route. And so what happens is, if we keep changing everything we're doing every day, our subconscious is like on fire, it's on tilt, and it's concerned. It's already concerned about thinking about, what does this COVID thing mean? Am I going to get sick? Is a loved one going to get sick? Could I lose my job? There's so many things that we don't control, and that our subconscious is like our blood pressure, all of these uncertainties, they're going a million miles an hour. When you do the same things and repeat the same things every day, you're at least calming your nerves. You can control that, and you're saying, okay, so at least that side of my daily routine is the exact same, so I can create that consistency, so I can then focus on my work. Again, trying to do a workout at home. If you went and worked out, we're doing a lot of family workouts. That's really helped. But obviously, taking time to take the breaks whenever. Before, I was very regimented. Like, I can only take a break during lunch hour. What is lunch hour? Lunch hour means nothing now, right? People are taking lunch at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's the one thing with Deltec I think we're really blessed about, is that our management has said, take whatever time you need, anytime you need it. No one's judging anymore. Doesn't matter what you wear. I'm always love to be in a suit. I'm in a polo shirt. Who cares, right? The rules are out the door. It's like, do what works for you. And that's just another thing that we have to think about, is the subconscious mind is just sort of calming our nerves and just controlling what we can control.
Yeah, love it, man. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. This was a brief conversation. Once again, Keith Miccio, Sales Enablement, Jason Bagshaw, Enterprise Rep, IQ Sales. So we appreciate the time, everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate it.